ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. This is Relentless Press. I'm your host, Abriam Opatz. Excited to be here, excited to be breaking down this game for you. Today we're going to hit you with a relentless rundown. We're going to go over the epic Monday night game between the Ravens and the Raiders. I want to kind of go over the game as a whole, and then we're going to break down individual teams and players, what they looked like, what their statistics mean, and what we can project in the coming weeks. I'm really excited to kind of bring you this content for the first time. The goal is to do every single game, every single week for you folks. So as we go through, if you have questions, if you have comments, drop them down below. I would love to answer your guys' questions and kind of hear what you guys think and what you have to say as well. So please bring the engagement, and I will be sure to get to as many questions as I can. For the Ravens and Raiders game, like I said, guys, this was a back and forth slugfest. It was an absolutely epic from start to finish. And it was an emotional roller coaster, to say the least. A lot of plays left me scratching my head for sure, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But it was a game that didn't see a whole lot of scoring early. It was a game that kind of took a little bit to get going, particularly Derek Carr, and we'll dive into his production late. But it wasn't looking like a whole lot of points were going to be scored in this game, and that's crazy when you look at the score and you see 33-27, 60 points scored in this game. Obviously, it went into overtime, so that helps. But in the second quarter, guys, the Ravens passed up a field goal that kind of made me scratch my head, just because points were so hard to come by in this game. And you have Justin Tucker. I mean, this guy is one of the best, if not the best, kicker of all time. Not only just in percentage-wise, but in clutch situations. Maybe Vinatieri is there, but usually when you have an opportunity to get points in a low-scoring game, you take them. And we saw multiple times where we had coaches decide to not do that. So that was the first kind of questionable play for me, where I was kind of scratching my head. And then with 3:22 to play in the third, it's 17-10. So it's, like I said, not a lot of points scored. And the Raiders have an opportunity to make it 17-13, inch closer into this game and really put some pressure on the Ravens. And they decide to pass up that field goal. Latavius Murray gets stuffed for -2 yards. They end up leaving 3 points on the board. And it was just really interesting to me. And I think we've seen, if you look at week 1, we've seen that change in the mindset of coaches a lot, where these guys are going for it on 4th down, and not even just 4th and short. There were 2 4th and 4s that the Bears decided to go for in the first quarter against the Rams the other day. There were some 4th down and longs that in the Giants game went for. So I think coaches are starting to get a little more aggressive, maybe looking at analytics to make their decisions as far as when they're going to try to put some more pressure on the defense and take a shot. As I said about Derek Carr, man, you look at his final statistics, and we'll go break that down here in a little bit, but you look, he goes for over 400 total yards. But man, did he struggle early on. It just looked like he wasn't in rhythm, he wasn't in sync. I think a little bit of that was that defensive line from the Ravens, but did not look great. He was missing some throws, particularly to Darren Waller, who he targeted immensely. And he turned it around, guys, in the 4th quarter and in overtime to bring it home for the Raiders. For the Ravens, you look at Lamar Jackson. Overall, he played a pretty solid game. There wasn't a whole lot that I would take negatively from him, besides obviously his turnovers, which were costly, and the last one ended up costing them the game. So outside of that, I think he played really well, but obviously, like, critical errors at a critical time, you're not going to win NFL football games like that. We're going to start breaking it down by team now. So first, I would just like to say, hey, if this is your first time watching, if you are new to this channel, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. It helps me out a ton to grow this channel with you guys, and you guys are, especially early on, you're going to be some of my first subscribers. So I really, really appreciate it, and hope that we can build this channel together so we can bring you the content that you guys really care about. And so like I said again, drop those comments, drop those questions down below, because I want to be able to bring you content that's important to you. This is a channel that's not what I want to do, it's what I can help you guys with so that you can dominate your fantasy leagues and stay up to date on what's going on in the league, what's going on in sports, in the sports world in general. Whew, words are hard. We're going to start breaking down the Ravens now, and I think the first thing we want to talk about is Le'Veon Bell. Because he was inactive in this game, and from what I've heard from reports, it may take him a couple weeks to get back into game shape, which, if you're Le'Veon Bell and he was saying all offseason that he wanted to get to a team that was going to give him touches, and then you get an opportunity in Baltimore and you're not ready, that makes me question just a little bit. So just something to think about and keep in mind, as far as it may be 3 weeks or so before he decides to be in game shape and be ready to rumble. And that really makes you think, like, okay, where are these touches going to go? Who's going to get the carries? I'm going to butcher his name. We're going to go with Tyson Williams for the Ravens. And if that's the wrong way to say it, let me know in the comments. But we think, you know, going into this game, right, that he's going to be the guy, that he's going to see the lion's share of the carries, so to speak. And that's what obviously fantasy owners were hoping for as well. The Ravens just went blow for blow with the Raiders in this game. It was, like I said, a back and forth battle. Their defense looked really great up front, but man, on the back end, especially late, Marcus Peters exits the game with an injury, and they just looked out of sorts after that. And you could see Derek Carr take advantage late in this game as the game wore on. Lamar Jackson, guys, and eventually he'll probably shake it off, but right now it's that same narrative, and that is that he is electric on the ground. He is very hard to bring down, but his passing game needs work, and I would say that that was kind of par for the course in this game. He finished 19 out of 30 for 235 yards and 1 passing touchdown, and 19 out of 30, not great, so still some work to do there. But 12 carries, 86 yards, so for fantasy, that saved his day. Because outside of those rushing yards, he would have had a really, really tough day for owners. Elusive, really, really hard to bring down. He made a couple plays where he just could not be brought down by 1, 2, 3 defenders, was able to create with his feet, get into the open field, buy time for his receivers, which really helped players like Sammy Watkins and Marquise Brown do some damage in the air. He did lose 2 fumbles, and he fumbled the ball 3 times in total. So that is extremely concerning when you think about how many times that he's probably going to run, how many times he's going to, you know, roll out of the pocket. To have 3 fumbles and to lose 2 of them in the first game of the season, just something to keep an eye on as we move forward. One of those, and this is important when we look at moving forward for the Ravens, who's going to see those touches on the ground, and who's going to get the carries. He had a handoff to Tyson Williams where he kind of gave it to him 80%, and then it looked like he tried to pull it back towards the end of it because he wanted to keep it himself. And I'm not sure if it was a miscommunication. I mean, obviously, these guys didn't get a ton of playing time together. And so I think that you can see that specifically in that play. The ball ends up on the ground and it's a turnover. But that might play into Williams' touches. And we'll talk about a little bit more here in a second why I think that might be. And Tyson, for the most part, looked really good, guys. Especially, you know, first NFL game, this rookie coming out of nowhere. Obviously, the injuries to the Ravens running back room decimated their hopes of the J.K. Dobbins season, and even Gus the Bus now goes down. But Tyson steps in as the guy, right? And so we're looking at his production for the game. 9 carries, 65 yards. All you could have hoped for in that. But I think even more so, he had a 35-yard touchdown run early in this game where it was one of those where you just sit back and you're like, okay, this guy might be it. This guy might have it, because he was absolutely explosive getting through the hole And that was just a really impressive play for a guy who's just coming in for his first NFL game. He also added some value to you guys as fantasy managers through the air. He had 4 targets, 3 catches for 29 yards. And so you look at his overall production, he almost had 100 yards of total offense in his first game. And he had some big plays, which is critical when you think about getting touches in this offense. A 35-yard touchdown ran. He had a 20-yard screen pass where he looked really, really good. And so if you can add big plays in this Ravens offense, you know they're already going to get touches. And then especially that value through the air, I think he immediately slides in to that RB2 conversation. And I think there's maybe, depending, right, how this turns out and what his touches look like moving forward, 13 overall targets, 9 carries, 4 through the air in this game. So, you know, he moves that up to 17 to 20 when they start getting a little more comfortable. He starts to get more work in that first team offense. And we might talk about him later down the road as a high-end RB1, low-end, high-end RB2, low-end RB1 if those touches continue to rise as that comfortability in the offense comes. The other back in this game, and we talked a little bit early, right, about Le'Veon Bell and being inactive, and you go look at, all right, who's going to fill that RB2 role now that Tyson was clearly that RB1, and that guy was Latavius Murray. I would say in this game, not overly impressive. He was 3 yards and a cloud of smoke. He had 10 carries for 28 yards, so you don't love that, but he did add a touchdown for you guys, and so that gives you a little bit of hope, you know, and what his, future could hold for this team. And I think right now he's an upside add. Obviously, you're not putting him into your lineup unless you're absolutely desperate. And if you're that desperate week 1, you probably should watch more of these videos so that we can get you up and ready and prepared for the rest of the season. The Ravens want to pound the rock. So we know there's going to be an RB2 in this offense who has value. We know they added guys like Devontae Freeman, and Le'Veon Bell. We don't know what his situation could hold. So right now that guy is Latavius Murray, and I think that's a speculation ad at worst with potential, you know, especially because late in this game, guys, as the game wore on and as it became more critical situations, Murray got the touches. We're talking about fourth quarter and even in overtime, it was not Tyson Williams who was getting those touches. It was Latavius Murray. And so that's something we have to keep in mind as well is, man, when the game's on the line, at least in this game, they gave it to the veteran. Going to the receiving game and what that looked like, because like we said, that's still a work in progress. Whew, words are hard for Lamar Jackson. And so Marquise Brown, the first guy I want to talk about, he had an amazing 30-yard catch, looked really athletic and fast early in the second quarter. And he finished with 6 catches on 6 targets, so you love to see that. For 69 yards and a touchdown, I would say, you know, right now, he's in that wide receiver 3 flex conversation, depending on what type of league you're playing. Because he did see those targets and he looked really, really good capitalizing on all those opportunities. The next guy I want to talk about, because it took me back in time for a minute when I'm watching him, is Sammy Watkins. This guy is someone who we've loved, or liked at least, for a while, but he just can't stay healthy. And so we know that this comes with a big if he can stay healthy. But in this game, guys, 8 targets. Now, he only caught 4 of them, so that's a little concerning. You don't love that. But he did it to the tune of 96 yards. He had a couple 25-plus yard plays, including a 49-yarder late with the game on the line. That was a really important drive for the Ravens to keep up with the high-powered Raiders offense. If he's available, go pick that guy up. I'm not sure I'm starting him, depending on the matchup, but he's someone that should be rostered in all leagues at this point, because right now, he's looking like the clear wide receiver 1 in that offense. He's looking like the clear target hog, and we'll get into Mark Andrews because I'm not sure where he was in this game. And he did have 5 targets in this game, and I watched the entire game, and I'm not sure where those targets came from. He was just invisible to me watching the film, and so that's concerning, not only because he had the 5 targets, but because he only turned those 5 targets into 3 catches for 20 yards. And so this guy being drafted, you know, middle of the 5th, maybe the 6th round, you're hoping for a lot more than that, and Lamar wasn't really looking his way, and so that's a little concerning. We don't want to panic yet, but we need to keep that in mind as we move forward and as we continue to see what this Ravens offense is going to look like. Before we break down Las Vegas's side of the ball, once again, guys, if you're enjoying the content, if you're liking what you're seeing, please please subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. All of your support helps me to do what I do for you guys so that we can continue to be the best fantasy players that we can be. For Las Vegas, they did just enough to win this game, and really that's what it came down to. They tried to lose it on multiple occasions. John Gruden did everything he possibly could to lose this game. They had just enough. And we're going to talk about John Gruden just for a second, kind of offshoot, because I was very frustrated as a fan just watching this. Not only did he choose to go for it on that 4th and 1 with 3:22 to go in the third when they were down 17-10. Points are critical there. He passed up on them. We talked about that earlier, but then in overtime, it's 2nd down and 9. About a 49-yard field goal is in play, right? But you still got a couple opportunities to move the ball forward a little bit and make life easier on your kicker. And he trots out the field goal unit late in the play clock. They have to burn a timeout to save them from getting a delay of game penalty. So you're already thinking, like, first of all, why are they trotting the field goal unit out on 2nd down and 9 when this is not a gimme field goal but then he does it late in the play clock and they have to burn a timeout. After they burn a timeout, Derek Carr decides to save John Gruden looking like a complete idiot and throws that bomb over the top to Zay Jones, 40-yard touchdown to win the game. The rest is history, but just something we have to think about when we think about the Raiders, their game management, and what late game situations might look like for them. With John Gruden at the helm, I had questions, and that's concerning from a Week 1 standpoint because there's a lot of season to play, and you need to be on your game, John Gruden, moving forward, and really think about the decisions you're making in the critical game situations. But enough about John. We're going to talk about Derek Carr because, like we talked about a little bit earlier, he didn't look great early on in the game. Not a lot of points were scored in the first 3 quarters. And man, he was all over the place targeting Darren Waller. At one point, Waller had 8 targets, 1 catch. 1 catch. And so, yeah, it's great that they're looking at Waller and that they want to get him involved in this offense, but he was missing on throws that were open. He had a 30-yard play that was called back. We're talking about Darren Waller. And then he missed wide open 65-yard potential touchdown he had to Darren Waller. And it's crazy because you go back, you look at the replay, and Carr's rolling out. He looks at Waller twice, and he sees the safety is about 15 yards on the other side of the field. The corner has completely collapsed, and there's just open field behind him. He looked at him twice and didn't want to air it out. And this was after he had those 8 targets already, so I'm not sure. Maybe Derek is saying, like, I'm going to try to look to another guy, which is fine. You want him to spread the ball around, but when you have that kind of an opportunity, you have to take advantage. So Carr finishes this game 435 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. So you look at the stats and he looks great, but he really waited until the 4th quarter and then obviously in overtime to elevate his game. And so you'd love to see that more early on, and it's something I think we have to at least take into consideration in 2 QB leagues and Superflex when we're thinking about starting Derek Carr. I would say he's a low end in 2 QB or flex leagues, low end QB2 at this point, even with that high statistical output, because I don't know, man. He just didn't turn it on until late, and that concerns me from a fantasy standpoint. We talked a little bit about Darren Waller. He had 19, and not a typo, 19 targets in this game. So as a Darren Waller owner, you are absolutely loving this. Almost 20 targets. He only caught 10 balls, but he turned it into 108 yards and a touchdown. Like I said, if Carr can hit Waller on that 65-yard touchdown, and then that 30-yard catch isn't called back on a very questionable pass interference call on the offense, you're looking at 200 yards receiving for Waller. Now, obviously, we're not expecting that every game, but I think that obviously he's going to be a huge part of this offense. He is going to continue to get looks. They want to go to him early and often, and so as a fantasy manager, you absolutely love to see that ginormous target share. Next, we're going to talk about Josh Jacobs, and there was a little bit of concern early on. Not even 4 minutes into this game, guys, you see him take a hit, and he kind of limps off. They were talking about it in the broadcast, some kind of potential turf toe injury. I think he's questionable right now for this week as we look into week 2. And so not only are we concerned because he got banged up early, he was clearly hurting in this game, guys. He was not 100%, especially as the game wore on. You could see him grimacing. And so that's something that we need to keep a very close eye on as we move forward, because we don't know what that might do for his total target share, for his touches as we move forward in this offense. And I also think that because Kenyon Drake looked so good, there's concern for his overall workload. Do they ease him back in, or do they kind of pull the reins back and make Drake a little bit more of the guy so that Jacobs can get back to 100%? Now, I will say, Josh Jacobs did have 2 touchdowns, absolutely saved his fantasy day. He had an absolutely awesome 15-yard touchdown run that was huge late in the 4th quarter, but outside of that, I was not impressed overall with what I saw from Josh Jacobs. And I think that when you look at Kenyon Drake, 11 touches overall. He had 70 yards. He caught the ball 5 times for 59 yards. So you love to see that from an RB2, getting that work in the passing game, especially if we're talking about PPR leagues. That's something where Kenyon Drake's got to be on your radar. I don't think, unless, right, Jacobs takes some time out of this offense, if he has to sit or whatever, Drake could be a sneaky RB2 option if ever Josh Jacobs was to miss time. And so that's something that we want to just at least keep on our mind. He looked really good, like I said, catching the ball out of the backfield. He was making plays in open space. They tried to get him the ball on some screens so that he could utilize that speed and cutting ability. So I would say stock up for Kenyon Drake. Now we're going to go to the receivers, and we're going to start with a guy that kind of came out of nowhere for people who maybe weren't paying too much attention. This is a guy that killed it in the preseason and was definitely rising up draft boards late, and that's going to be Bryan Edwards. He had 2 huge catches, back-to-back 25-yard catches, to give the Raiders a chance to hit a 55-yard field goal to go into overtime, which Daniel Carlson, ex-Minnesota Viking, rest in peace, hit and moved the Raiders into an opportunity to take this game and steal it away from the Ravens. I think he's someone that we stash for now. I'm not going to feel comfortable starting him. But guys, he has the potential to be the the wide receiver 1 in this offense. He has the potential down the road, when we see it a little bit more and get that consistency, to crack our lineup. So I think someone to keep an eye on and stash if he's available on your waiver wire for now. Finally, we're going to go to Hunter Renfro. He is what he is, right? So he's a solid outlet for Derek Carr. He's not going to make plays down the field a whole lot, but he showed some really good catch and run ability. He was consistent and available on short 3rd downs to keep the chains moving. So he's a low ceiling guy. He's got a decent floor though. And for deeper leagues, people maybe needing some wide receiver depth, I think he could do a lot worse than Hunter Renfro. And that's kind of it, guys. That's what I saw from each of these teams. That's kind of the step-by-step player profile that we got and to take away from this game. But like I said, one more time, please, please, please ask questions in the comments down below. I'd love to bring in some content for you guys and answer any of your questions that you may have. I want to hear your opinions. Do you think that I missed on some of these guys, or I maybe am not reading the situation quite right? And then finally, please like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate your support. Thanks for having me, and we will see you next time on the Relentless Rundown.